Welcome back to the Knick-Knack Review. Today we're taking a look at Mortal Kombat, the movie. Let's get started. So right from the start, we are introduced to Scorpion and the rest of his family, which I did not actually know they existed because I'm not as familiar as some when it comes to the Mortal Kombat lore. I did my fair share of playing the original video games when I was younger, but not really that familiar with all the mythology and all the stories of the animated movies and stuff like that. So this was definitely a fresh take for me and very, very different from the 90s movie that I'm familiar with. Who knew Scorpion could be such a family man? Well, all that is short-lived as we see Sub-Zero, who is not exactly Sub-Zero at the moment, come over and just completely destroy his entire crew and his family, and it's just an all-out slaughter. And this is where the rivalry begins with Scorpion and Sub-Zero, and Sub-Zero ends up killing him. And it's kind of like, it hits you right when this movie starts off. It wastes no time. After we see the classic battle between Scorpion and Sub-Zero, with Scorpion losing, Raiden appears and he takes this child that belonged to Scorpion, and he takes him and he's like, your heir will live on, don't worry. And he just disappears into the sky, and then centuries later, you learn from that child, the offspring of Scorpion is Cole. This is where we meet his family. And Cole is just your average, ordinary guy, and he kind of takes the role that you pretty much everybody knows. You know, it's like this regular guy, or at least you think I am, and I got this birthmark. I have something special on me, which they all the characters that are chosen for the tournament, they have the special symbol on them, on their body, and it's like a birthmark, and it's got the Mortal Kombat symbol on it, and they don't know what it is, or some of them don't know what it means, including Cole, until, of course, somebody comes up that has knowledge and tells them, and it's like, oh, look, you've been chosen for the tournament. So it doesn't take long after introducing Cole to the audience and his family, kind of figure out he's just a regular guy. This is where you're introduced to the real Sub-Zero, the one everybody knows and some love, I guess. He's my personal favorite. But this Sub-Zero was very different from the Sub-Zero that I knew from number one, the 90s movie, but also just from the games in general. And again, I've only played the original game, so I'm not as familiar as what Sub-Zero really could be, I guess. And this Sub-Zero, holy crap, he is like the Terminator. He is hunting down all of the tournament, all the people in the tournament, and he is just killing them left and right, as the ones he could find anyway. And he goes after Cole, and he's like, yep, come here. And it just all of a sudden starts snowing, and then his kid is like, oh, look, Mommy, it's snowing. And he's like, what? And all of a sudden you just see Sub-Zero, whoosh. And it's awesome to see that. And it's nice to see a new Sub-Zero, like the more faithful Sub-Zero than we've ever gotten, and something really accurate, and just really with the special effects nowadays, it really does him justice, and all the characters justice. We'll get to that later, but it's nice to see a more modern take on everything, but still maintain the classic character. It stays true to the character as far as I'm concerned. Now, after he starts going after Cole, this is where we kind of run into Sonia, Jax, and Kano. I gotta say, man, Kano stole that movie. I remember him in the classic game, and he never really stood out to me in the game. I never played with his character or anything, but this guy was perfect for the role of Kano, and he just absolutely stole the show. He was the most memorable character for sure. I think they did a great job with the casting in this movie. Jax, I mean, the guy played Jimmy in Supergirl. I was like, at first I didn't recognize him, but he has that demeanor and that voice. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that guy. Sure enough, it was Jimmy from Supergirl, and it was great. But he really, I find that each character, in fact, really captured the character they're portraying from the game really, really well. They really stayed true to the characters. And anyone correct me if I'm wrong, but I found that when I was watching this movie, regardless of the past movies, when I saw these actors, I didn't actually see the actors. I saw the characters, and that's very important for whether it be a video game, movie, a comic book movie, anything that is, you're portraying a character that is well known. And I got this feeling with all of these characters. I can't think of one that really didn't capture the essence of the characters they were portraying. I think they did a fantastic job. Now, we do get one intense scene, but a very important one with Jax and Sub-Zero. When Sub-Zero's hunting everybody down, he runs into Jax, and Jax, doesn't have the metal arms yet. He's just a regular person, but he runs into Sub-Zero and he tries to put up a fight, and Sub-Zero just grabs his arms and freezes them, and bam, there goes his arms. I'm like, well, there's the setup right there. And it was a really cool scene because I'm like, okay, so Sub-Zero is going to be the one responsible. Who else is he going to be responsible for creating? He's playing the role of the Terminator, so it's like, what else is he going to do? And it's right after this that the other three end up going to a temple and meeting Liu Kang. And it's not long after that Sub-Zero ends up tracking them down. And then right after that, the Emperor and Raiden come face to face. And that was one scene that I was really looking forward to because Raiden was another favorite of mine. And I just love seeing his powers come to light. Like, I love seeing him actually using his power. And I know he's a god and he's like almost one of those that like don't interfere. But I mean, he was a playable character in the game. And I always wanted to play as him, and between him and Sub-Zero. And they were just a lot of fun for me. And so to be able to play as him in the game, but then when you see him in a movie, he's not really doing much. He's just kind of there. I get they're being more faithful to maybe the more modern games or the modern stories versus way back when. But I don't know. I liked Raiden. I just wish he would have done more instead of just being one of the guys in the back that just kind of is like, oh yeah, this is what you should do. This is what's happening. And just kind of a guy that tells stories. But I still think the guy that played him, he was actually really good. He did a great job. Now, one thing I will say about this movie that really stuck out to me was it reminded me of the short film, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, but Gong Shu Dao. It's a short film I would suggest that to anyone. It has Donnie Yen, it has Tony Jaa, has Jet Li, amongst a whole bunch of other martial artists, and it was very, very good. It was a short film, and I don't want to like give anything away about it, and it has been a while since I've seen it, but it really it shows off martial arts in China, and it's really good. It's a short film. It's not very long. But it's not a big story or anything. It's just, hey, look, this is our way of getting all these actors together. And it's actually a way of celebrating martial arts. And that, when they were in the temple in Mortal Kombat, that's the vibe I got. They came together and they, were training, and eventually they started fighting. Once the Emperor showed up, they started fighting. And that's the vibe I got, which is a good vibe because it was a great short film. I definitely... I recommend that short film to anyone that is a fan of Mortal Kombat or martial arts in general. If you haven't seen it, please go check that out. It's a really great short film. Now, in this movie, each person kind of like has their inner power within them. Again, I'm not familiar with how faithful that is, I guess, if you will, to the lore of Mortal Kombat, but each person has this power, and Kano being one of them. I remember him having like a metal, half face, and then having a laser beam coming out of his eye. But he was kind of robotic in that sense, kind of like Jax is robotic arms. Well, they all have a special power, and when Jax loses his arms, he gets them replaced with some little funky metal arms that really don't do much. But then his power activates, and all of a sudden, he gets these huge metal arms that we know are accurate to his character. And Kano, happens the same way. He just gets really, really mad, and one of the other characters just like kind of like it provokes him, and like trying to really get him mad in order for that to happen. And it worked. And all of a sudden he's just like and then laser shoots out of his eye, and then he's like, "All right, we're good." And it's not long after that Kano kind of does something that, because I was really liking the guy, and then he ends up betraying the team, and I'm like, crap. Now I gotta hate him for a minute. Yeah, he ends up betraying the team, and they get the shields lowered, and the Emperor and his goons show up, and they all start fighting. Now this is actually when I really kind of, I guess you could say, geeked out in a way, because I was always a fan of Mortal Kombat in general. I always loved the levels, the look of the levels, and the look of the characters, and again, not a fan or not familiar with the more modern games, but I have seen the gameplay, so I have a little bit of familiarity with it. And some of these levels, or I'm sorry, some of these fights in this movie, it really felt like a Mortal Kombat movie. It felt like a Mortal Kombat fight. And from my knowledge, very limited, some of these fights actually took place in some of the levels that they are known for in the game. So while it may not be completely accurate to the game, I'm pretty sure that it was somewhat accurate. So I love the fact that the director and the writers, they actually took the time to do their research and be like, okay, look, we got to make sure when these two fight, they fight here, and when these two fight, they fight here. And they actually did some of their finishing moves, and I love that. And the execution of some of their moves and finishers, fatalities and flawless victory and all that stuff, that was all in there. And it didn't feel forced when they were saying that, because there's a lot of things in video games you want to put in there, but it's kind of like the Street Fighter movie in the 90s, like there's a lot of elements that you want to put, but it doesn't feel natural. It seems cheesy, and I will admit there were some cheesy moments in this movie, but it didn't like oversell it. It wasn't over cheese. It was mild cheese. But I think they did a great job with the cheese they were given. I think it worked really well for this movie. This movie does look like it could have been shot in the 90s in a certain degree with the cheese factor that they had going on. But it worked because, for one, the modern twist, or the modern take, but it was, they weren't like cheesy in the dialogue. It was just some of the video game aspects that they tried to bring to life. And while it did work, a little bit of cheese. Now, after all hell breaks loose in the temple and you get to see the classic Mortal Kombat fights, eventually we lead into Scorpion versus Sub-Zero Part 2. And it was a really, really great fight. I will say the choreography in this entire movie was excellent. It didn't feel like I was watching another movie, with the same type of style or anything. Even if some of the styles were exactly the same, it didn't remind me of another movie. It was very much its own thing. And the choreography was amazing. It was very natural. All the fighting felt really natural. And I will say that final fight between Sub-Zero and Scorpion was very, very pleasing. Even though I'm a Sub-Zero fan, and of course I wanted him to win, considering he was the bad guy, I was like, okay, well, he's the bad guy, well, go Scorpion, I guess. And during their fight, Cole actually jumps in and helps him, so it's actually 2-on-1, and things go kind of cold for Sub-Zero, I guess you could say. The two end up killing Sub-Zero, and I will say this, it was actually nice to see Scorpion's finishing move and everything. It was just to see that come to life. It actually did feel natural. It didn't feel video game-y. It felt like something he would actually do as a person in that world. And it was very, very organic. And after the dust settles, you get Raiden coming back, and he has a one-on-one with the Emperor, and he's just, it's like, okay, yeah, you got this, but now we're getting ready for the tournament. So this movie was kind of a setup for another movie. That's kind of how it felt. This movie didn't have the actual tournament that we all know and love, but it definitely felt like a setup for the future tournament. So whether there is going to be a Mortal Kombat 2 or not, this movie definitely sets up for another one. There's plenty of direction that they can go from. I mean, there's plenty of source material to pull from. So, I mean, sky's the limits really with this. They set some good groundwork. And I will say this, one scene that I liked before the credits started rolling, Cole was talking to his trainer or whatever, and he said, oh, you got to find this guy named Cage. And then next thing you know, you see the poster, and it's like, well, there's Cage. I mean, he's coming. He's coming. All in all, I thought this was a great movie. With my limited knowledge, I really enjoyed it. And even if you're not familiar with Mortal Kombat and you just like a good sci-fi thriller, martial arts movie, or anything that reminds you of any kind of comic book or even video game movies, for that matter, if you're a fan of those, because there's really not a lot of great video game movies. I will say, if I were to rank this one amongst pretty much all the video game movies, it would definitely be a top 5 for me. There are some movies that I like video game-wise, very nostalgic, so therefore I watch them over and over. But the nostalgic part really brings me back. It's not necessarily the story or the acting or the special effects, but this movie in general actually it made me want to watch it again. It made me want to tune in and see, hey, if there is a sequel, I definitely want to check it out. I would say I'd give this movie a rating of going to the theaters to watch it. Well, that about does it for me, guys. Again, I really enjoyed this movie, so please go check it out. If there's anything I missed story-wise or any kind of characters or anything at all, please let me know in the comments below and give me some of that knowledge that you have of Mortal Kombat. I'd love to learn some more and maybe prepare for number 2. And while you're there, don't forget to, well, you know what to do. As always, I am Clint the Knickknack, and I will see you on the next one.